Welcome to the videoing of the Outlaw Radio Show. 4 blocks of audio. We record, we send to his productions. He takes those 4 blocks of audio, Josh Brown. He produces a radio show out of them. Condenses it to 2 files. We get those back, combine them to 1. It becomes the podcast. What we're doing, and we've been doing this for several weeks now, which is a blast, is we've been video recording the actual, I guess for lack of a better phrase, taping, old school, of the radio, what we do with the Outlaw Radio Show. And so glad you're with us. Glad you're watching. I'm joined by Creighton, who's kind of our sidekick.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
You're still asking the audience questions.
I'm going to do it every time because I think it's pithy.
You think it's pithy. That happens to be Josh Brown's favorite word.
Yes, I do.
Pithy. Anyway, we're going to just dive right into the show today and leave us a little bit more time towards the end to wrap things up with some thoughts. We're actually going to start the episode. Creighton is bringing a topic that Creighton wants to talk about.
Here we are.
And then we're going to have some fun today. So glad you're with us. Hold tight. We're going to kind of rock and roll. So at this point, the music's rolling. And we're going to dive right in. First block's 14. 14.
Let me set it up.
3. 2. Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. Our Sunday service is at 10:30. Check us out online. The church website is calvary316.tv. You can also watch our online service. Again, same time, 10:30. You can watch on Facebook, facebook.com/Calvary316. Twitter, our handle is at Calvary316. Or the quick link to our YouTube channel is Calvary316.live. And so one Sunday, whether you're local or not, check us out, hang out with us, visit our church digitally. Our heart with the Outlaw Radio Show is to tackle relevant topics in an honest and genuine way. So wherever you're listening or however you're listening, you might be watching. And what I mean by that is that we are video recording the recording of the Outlaw Radio Show. So this is a radio show that gets released as a podcast, but we're also video recording, and we're rolling out these videos every Thursday night at 8 p.m. on our Outlaw Radio YouTube page. The easiest way to find it, to subscribe, is to go to outlawradio.live. Again, outlawradio.live. If you are listening on the radio, we want to thank you for doing so. We are so appreciative of all of our radio partners across the United States. This is a nationally syndicated show, and it really wouldn't be what it is if not for the godly men and women who run these stations that believe we have something to say and air us. So if you're listening on the radio, we thank you for joining. If you are listening on the podcast, we're so thankful for that as well. If you've never checked out our podcast, visit outlawradio.org. That's our website. We have some quick links. The Outlaw Radio podcast, it's available on Apple Podcasting. It's available on Google Play. It's also available on Spotify, which is very cool. We just recently added that to the repertoire. So check out the podcast. What makes podcasting great is if, let's say, you're listening in the radio, on the radio, and you're not able to listen to the episode in its entirety. It's a 52-minute show, an hour-long radio show, so you might not be able to listen from start to finish. That's okay. You can go to the podcast, subscribe, and then when we release the episode, it downloads automatically to your iPhone, your Android device, your tablet, your computer, wherever you podcast from. So we're very excited about all of these things. I am joined, as I have been for some time now, by my sidekick, the Millennial Observer, Creighton Vaughn. Creighton, thank you for being on the show.
Always a pleasure to be here, man.
Now, your particular role is what when it comes to the Outlaw Radio Show?
Usually, I am a surrogate for the audience. So I'm here to listen to what you say, ask questions, maybe interject points that I think are relevant, that I think people will think about. I hope that people think the way I do, I guess.
I hope people don't necessarily think the way...
The world would be a very different place.
It would be a very different place.
But yeah, I'm here to as both an audience for you because it makes talking easier.
It does
when you're
do
not
that.
staring at a refrigerator, and just to be someone who can be a voice for the audience in a way, so that you have someone to bounce ideas off of, someone who will poke at your ideas, etc. I guess.
Now, what makes Creighton uniquely qualified for this particular task is the longevity of our relationship, the length of time that Creighton and I have not just known each other, but have been friends. So I've known Creighton basically his entire life. His parents were involved in the church that my dad started. And so I was born in 83. What year were you born?
93. We are almost exactly 10 years apart.
We both were members of Calvary Chapel Stone Mountain for really until Calvary 316.
Yeah.
And Creighton I had always known, the little twerpy kid running around the church that was a tyrant.
I was a disaster as a child.
Just brutalized all Sunday school teachers. And so at the time I graduated Bible college, had moved home. I was working at Calvary Chapel Stone Mountain as the high school and middle school youth pastor. And word reached me. Really, it was like a celebration of all the elementary school teachers at the church that Creighton was now moving to middle school and would be my problem. And the first exchange that we had was on the middle school bus heading to a youth camp where I told you, you have officially a second chance because I'm not going anywhere, you're not going anywhere, and I can make your life miserable. That's about it,
it
right?
was more like we can either be friends or we can fight each other for the next 7 years because I'm not going anywhere and you're not going anywhere. So we're going to have to deal with each other for the next 7 years. So you can either be cool and we can be friends, or I can fight you for the next 7 years. And I chose to be friends. And that was now, what, 15 years ago?
Which I would have totally fought you.
Oh, yeah. No,
Matter of fact, I
doubt.
kind of would have preferred that, maybe.
At some points during my adolescence, you ended up having to fight me.
Now, I want to. This was not necessarily the plan to start the show. We've got a topic, an important topic we're going to get to in a moment. But so you were a sixth grader, going on a middle school camp, had this exchange with me, and you've kind of pointed back to that moment being a pivotal one in your life, right?
That's the moment where I point to myself as that's where I actually joined Jesus's team. Like I was saved as a first grader, 5 or 6, I don't know, when I was too young to really know what I was doing, but I think old enough for it to matter. And then I went on being just a child for the next 10 years or whatever. I guess it wasn't 10 years, 4 years. I don't know how old I was, so it's hard to say how many years. At any rate, I just kept, it wasn't like actually a thing in my life until an adult. And I say that now. You were what, 21? An adult sat down and talked to me like I was an adult about life in a way that had never happened to me before. And at that point, it was like, all right, this is the thing that I'm doing from now on. And so from that point on, I think I was at either every youth group or almost every youth group until I went to college.
And then you were in college a year and came back and interned with us for a summer, and that's really when the Lord placed a call in your life to go into ministry full time.
Yeah, I went to the middle school retreat. It was either the middle school or high school retreat. Don't remember which one, because they were a week apart. We did one and then the other. We stayed
did
down
one
the
and then
whole
the
time.
other, right?
And it was on one of those retreats that I felt God speak to me and you need to be in ministry. And I'm still not entirely sure what that looks like all the way. Who knows?
Well, at that moment, you wouldn't think you'd be on a nationally syndicated radio show telling your story to people.
That is absolutely true. I never would have thought that. I still kind of am in disbelief about it. But yeah, it was I need to, and my thought was, well, if I'm going to be a minister, if I'm going to go into ministry, who would I how do I learn to do that? And it became very clear to me very shortly after that it was, I need to drop out of college, move back home with my parents.
Saved you a lot of money.
Saved me a lot of money.
Saved you a lot of money.
Had at least one fight with my mother about it, maybe 4. She was not happy that I dropped out
You
of
probably
college.
still have fights with your mother about dropping out of college.
Once a year for the last 7 years, she's asked me, maybe longer than that, 8 years. She's asked me if I'm going to go back to college. The answer is still no, Mom. But We did that. So I worked at the church at Stone Mountain for, I think, a year and a half. And then we started 316 and
You jumped ship, you came with me, and you've been with me ever since. The reason I want to bring this up is, we've been listening, we've been living in, interesting times where churches haven't been meeting. And one of the components very few people have talked about, so we've switched over to digital church services for adults. And then churches were quickly adapting to providing things for children. But I've heard very few people talk about youth ministry, and I was a youth pastor for 10 years. And man, we need to get back to youth group as soon as possible. Parents, please understand that these years of your kid's life, from 6th grade to 12th grade, from 11 to 18, are the most pivotal years of your child's development, not just educationally, but spiritually. So much of what happens in your child's life in those years form a trajectory for where they go forever. I've heard varying stats, but the general belief is that if someone doesn't make a decision to follow Jesus before they turn 18, the probabilities of them making that decision at some point later in life drop astronomically. Wow. And just to hear someone like Creighton say, man, I was a 6th grader, clueless, and it was sitting on a bus before we'd even rolled out of the parking lot, that I had an exchange with an adult that cared about me, and Jesus gripped my heart, and that changed my life in that moment. Like, understand those things. I could spend 4 or 5 shows talking about those type of occasions. And so we need to get back into church, and we need our kids to get plugged into youth group. And you need to recognize, if you're listening and you have teenagers in your home, you don't leave important decisions to them alone. You don't let your kids make decisions, your teenagers make decisions solely on their own concerning what they're going to walk out of the house wearing. I promise you, if you have a teenage daughter, you don't leave her wardrobe entirely up to her discretion. You have some input and some influence. You don't leave your child's diet solely to their discretion. You have an influence. So important things, you want to let your kids grow and sow their own oats and whatnot, but with important things, you put your foot down and say, as for me and my house, we serve the Lord. And I just encourage you as a parent, make youth group a priority for your teenager. Even if they don't want to, it makes a tremendous impact long-term. And Creighton is a great example of that. So am I. The Lord did a work in my life during my teenage years, kept me alive, and set my life on a trajectory.
Absolutely.
Which was really neat. Now, we are, burning clock very rapidly here. Very rarely in your role on the Outlaw Radio Show have you reached out. As a matter of fact, I don't think this has ever happened.
I think this will be a first.
Where you're like, hey, I want to talk about this tonight. Can we talk about this tonight? And I said, sure, but you're going to have to kind of set the stage for it. So you have 2 minutes to set the stage so that then we can discuss in more details in the next block. So go for it, Creighton.
Okay, so very rarely do I feel like moved about a subject, but I have recently. And it's I think it's pronounced Ahmaud. It might be Ahmaud or something like that.
I think
Is it
Ahmaud?
Ahmaud Arbery case, which was a black guy that got shot in
Brunswick, Georgia.
Yeah. What was it, 2 months ago now?
It was in February, but it's recently become national news because a video was released.
Yes.
You had Oprah and
literally
LeBron
everyone
James,
has said something about it. And as a black guy who has spent most of his time around white people, it is fascinating to me. Like the whole thing is fascinating because I have people on my wall who are like doing the run for Ahmaud, where they run 2.2 miles or whatever as some type of solidarity, which I don't really understand, but it's the thing they're doing.
Well, he was killed when he was out running, and apparently that's how far
That's how far he ran. Like, I get the symbolism of it, I just don't actually get the thing. But then again, I'm not a runner.
You don't say.
Yeah, no. This is definitely the body of a swimmer who's 5'4".
Again, if you're listening on the radio or if you're listening on the podcast, a few things that you need to know up front. First, let me reiterate, Creighton is black.
Indeed.
He doesn't sound quite like he's an African American.
And in the winter, I don't really look it either.
And then no, you still do. You still do. And secondly, Creighton is not exactly a bodybuilder. He's
No.
about 5'3".
I'm 5'4", thank you.
You're 5'4".
That inch is very important to me.
Yes, not incredibly athletic. Now this is a very important topic that we need to unpack, that we need to address in more detail. I just want to reiterate, want to repeat that if you're listening, radio, podcast, check out Thursday nights, 8 p.m., outlawradio.live, our YouTube channel. These episodes are being filmed and released as video, and so check us out. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on the Outlaw Radio Show. Wow, the timing on that was great. I don't know, did you make a timer on that?
I did. I had my sound off. I did not know that it had an actual timer.
An actual timer. Did you hear that?
I didn't know that
you
the
heard
timer
that or
had
not.
a
His alarm
sound
went
on
off
it.
on his phone, which would have been just tragic if it was in the midst of the radio show. So,
Oh my!
act like you've been here before, Creighton.
I did. I've never used the timer on my phone before. When would I have ever used my timer?
All
I
right.
don't have.
Next block's 12 minutes. I'll set it up and then explain more of the story and then dive into kind of what makes this particularly interesting to you.
All right.
All right. So 12 minutes. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm joined by Creighton Vaughn, my sidekick, the Millennial Observer. Creighton.
Hello, everyone. I am still here.
So you, in the lead into the show, introduced a topic, which is unique because most of the time you're here to just observe, to listen, to interject, based upon what I've determined the show is going to be about. You reached out yesterday, I think it was, and said, hey, I'd really like to talk about this particular story. I have some thoughts on it I want to share. So we're going to kind of invert the roles here, and I want you to talk about this particular story, set the stage for it, and then just segue right into some of the reactions that you're having about it.
All right. Well, if you're unaware of the Ahmaud Arbery case, basically what transpired, as far as we can tell, was there was a black guy who was in a predominantly white neighborhood, and he was in, at some point he was in a open construction site house. He was running down the street, was accosted by 2 white men with guns, and one of them was close enough that he went for the gun, and he was shot twice and died.
And this happened in February.
Yes, this happened in February.
Brunswick, Georgia. Virtually no one knew anything about this
until a couple of weeks ago, when a video of the actual incident in the street,
the exchange that killed him, you actually see him being shot.
Yeah.
And it's pretty brutal to watch.
It's graphic. I would not look it up if you're not prepared for that kind of thing. It's not something that people should see.
And immediately this story became, because of video, it became national news. Which
it went viral immediately.
Which is a big thing because we've been wall-to-wall coronavirus for 2 months. And so for something to kind of break through that is pretty significant.
Yeah, this did more traffic online than the Biden thing, which is insane.
Which is another story in and of itself.
Yes.
So this event that occurred, and there's still a lot of murky circumstances.
We know very little about anything at all.
We know very little. And in fact, in the last week, 2 different videos have been released. One from kind of a doorbell cam across the street, showing him venturing into this construction site. Another video I saw was from within the construction site, him kind of milling his way. There had been a police call, if I get all the facts
somebody
right.
saw him go into the construction
Thought
site.
that somebody was robbing the construction site.
Yes, they called the police and had an exchange.
And it was a father and son that kind of got in their truck. Now, one of them was a police officer, correct?
I think he was a former police officer.
A former police officer.
If my information is correct, he was in his 60s, I think.
And his son was with him. And they were the 2 people that confronted Arbery.
Yes.
And that's when things kind of spiraled out of control. Again, we don't know all of the facts, all of the details. Now,
right.
For obvious reasons, I'm sure this strikes a chord with you. For a reason that there's no way I could ever possibly understand. And that is the general stereotyping that we have in our country concerning young black men. And I don't want this to devolve into that particular debate.
No, because I don't think that's necessary for it to devolve into that specific debate.
Other than for me to acknowledge that there is a particular wrinkle to our society that you experience much differently purely because of the way that you look than I do purely because of the way that I look.
Right.
So you're going to process things a bit differently than I would. So I want you to kind of walk the audience through your thoughts on this, your reactions to this, why you're bringing this topic to our attention.
So, basically, the way that I first saw it was I saw it on a Reddit thread. The headline was like "Black man slain in white racist something or other," and my first thought was, "Oh, there's probably more to that story. I'm just going to move on because it's just going to make me sad, and I don't want to do that right now." And then, as that was probably that was the first time I saw it, and then maybe a day later, I saw it all over my Facebook feed. And so I was like, all right, well, now I have to do this.
I can't avoid this. This is a topic.
This is going to be a thing that at some point we're going to have to talk about it on Outlaw Radio. At some point I'm going to have to talk about it with the people that I know. So I haven't actually watched the video because it freaks me out a little bit. And I just have no interest in watching a man die. So I haven't watched the video. I've watched the other two from the construction site. I just haven't watched the one where the actual incident happens. And I've listened to a few different people that I respect talk about it. And it's just the situation is insane to me. Because from everything that I have seen and read, this is the kind of hypothetical that I would have used 2 years ago or longer, like when the Trayvon Martin thing was happening. I would have used this kind of story as a hypothetical to my more white distrusting relatives. Like, yeah, the Trayvon Martin thing happened and it's terrible, but it's not like, a black guy who wasn't committing a crime just got accosted by a white guy, shot, and then nobody investigated it.
There were other mitigating circumstances to all of that.
Kind of.
Right.
We have no evidence that he committed a crime, and he was shot, and he died, and then they didn't investigate it. That's insane. Regardless, I don't care what color anybody in the circumstance is.
Now, when you're talking about this particular case, to just relay the facts, that's what really bugged you to begin with. It was the fact that this guy gets shot, and there's no investigation to it whatsoever. It was kind of rubber stamped. Let's move on. No big deal. Now, the facts that I've heard of the case, and this goes to your point, is that the police officers that arrived on the scene, that did the initial investigation of what happened, taking the statements that they could, concluded these guys need to get arrested. Not sure exactly what all they're charged. There could have been an altercation, but there's enough here that
we need to make an arrest and then deal with all of the things as they are discovered.
Our job as police is to arrest them. It's the job of a prosecutor to figure out exactly what the crime is, what they're being prosecuted for.
Right.
We can charge them. Prosecuting is a different thing. But because the elder of the two had some connections there in Brunswick, Georgia, the verdict of the police officers there got superseded. They weren't arrested, and they were allowed to go free. And then this would have probably not been a story at all.
There would probably be no investigation. Nothing would have happened.
Except for the fact that video was released and it became a story. And now a few heads have rolled. The Department of Justice is looking into this.
It's been moved up to the GBI.
The individuals have been arrested. They're in jail.
I think have they been charged yet? I'm not actually sure.
They haven't. I did read today they've been placed in isolation out of fear.
That is a solid choice to make there.
For their lives. They were denied bail, bond. So you had made a comment that I want to try to get back to, that as a black man that's generally grown up around white people, that contributed to a particular reaction. Expound on that just a little.
So when I first heard about it, I knew that two things were going to happen. I knew that all of the black people I know would start to cry racism, and all of the white people I know would try and defend a thing that they're not actually trying to defend to make it not racism. They're just going to try and make it not racism.
Now, do you think it was racially motivated?
Maybe 50-50. Who knows?
See,
I don't know them. I don't know.
That to me is the sticking point. So I have a friend that I'm not going to name, who immediately went to Facebook. And I don't consider this individual to be liberal at all.
Mm-hmm.
But he Facebooked out, he put on his wall this whole big diatribe about, this is the evidence that racism is alive and well in America, blah, 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 blah. Now, these guys might be Klan members for all I know. The thing is no one knows anything. And to just immediately jump to the conclusion that it was racially motivated because it was two white guys and a black victim is also racist.
I agree with you.
So explain why you agree with me, because...
So I think that the problem is an empathy problem on all sides, because most things in life are. Like, I knew that black people would jump to it being racist because it seems racist. Like, it's two white guys that killed a black guy and nothing happened.
Driving in a pickup truck in the South during the day, shooting a guy with a shotgun.
Exactly. Everything about it seems racist. So I'm not surprised that people jump to racism. I think that it's also racist to immediately jump to racism, though, because you don't know anything about them. You're literally judging them on their skin color, which is the definition of racism. So it's both things are racist in a hard to parse way.
Why do you think it is, as a society, that we can't just pump the brakes, let an investigation happen, find out what was going on, and then make determinations based upon more data as opposed to no data?
Because people love judging other people.
Especially when it becomes racially loaded.
Absolutely. It is super easy to just, you're on your phone, you're on your computer. It's easy to just write a post. And when 50 million people are doing that, it becomes an avalanche. And then if you're the guy that's saying that's not it, you look like a jerk.
Well, we're gonna continue this a little bit more after the break. I do want to point out just a little bit of our contact information. It's important for us to interact with you, the listening audience. If you have a question about anything said on the show, if you'd like to share an opinion, question an opinion, submit an opinion, whatever, info@outlawradio.org is our email address. We're also on Facebook /The Radio Outlaw, and our Twitter handle is @radio_outlaw. Should also point out you can watch the recording of the show on our YouTube channel, which is outlawradio.live. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You have anything like more you want to say about this? Like, is this kind of the point that you wanted to unpack?
Yeah, that's the basic thing I wanted to pack. Is I think the big problem is empathy, and I think that it is people seeing a thing that, I mean, like, I don't see how this doesn't look racist without, as soon as you get more information about them, like, who knows? They could be Klan members. They could have black wives and go to cookouts at NAACP meetings every weekend. We don't know anything about them.
Gonna go out on a limb and says probably not true.
Probably not true.
But we don't know.
Could be.
I hate the overreaction to the people that have no idea what they're talking about.
I agree. I hate it too. I just think it is fascinating to me how quickly people go to their corners, for lack of a better term.
Well, we see that politically.
Absolutely.
We're in corners about the coronavirus. Let's actually talk about that. Let's segue that.
Okay.
All right.
What's the next
11 minutes.
Also, how am I doing? Because I'm incredibly nervous.
No, you're fine.
All right, cool.
You're fine.
Say 11 minutes?
11 minutes.
Ready.
Ahmaud Arbery.
Ahmaud Arbery.
3, 2. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm joined by my sidekick, Creighton Vaughn.
Hey, y'all.
Creighton is an African-American young man.
I am indeed.
Has been following a story of particular interest. Creighton, the story is...
It's the Ahmaud Arbery case, the black guy who was killed in, I can never remember the name of the...
Brunswick, Georgia.
Brunswick, Georgia. Thank you.
Down towards Savannah.
Right. I think I've been to Savannah once, so I'm vaguely aware of where it is.
We were talking during the break, and you kind of summarized the problem with things like this as empathy.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So basically whenever something like this happens, it draws a line in the sand, and then everyone who is on one side of the line groups up and they go to their corners. Like in a boxing ring, when the bell hits, you go to your corners, you got your cornerman in, you're talking amongst yourself, and you come back to fight. And if either side took like 5 minutes to think about how this looks and what the other side is feeling, I think it would solve all of these issues. Like, I know a lot of white people, and none of them want like these guys to not be at least charged and tried and find out who is guilty and who is not, or something. Like, none of them are like, oh yeah, kill the black guy. Now there are people out there like that, but they're a tiny minority. That being said, I also know a lot of black people who actually, I think, might think that white people think that.
The thing that irritates me most about situations of this nature is white people that immediately jump to the conclusion it was racially motivated because of the white people involved.
Oh yeah, white knighting. I said white too many times.
It's white guilt.
Yes.
It's the immediate assumption that it's racially motivated because, anything that's white and black has to be.
Right. And that's not
I don't
true
understand
at all.
that. I don't understand that. And that's always irritated me. And my friend that I was talking about it in the last block that immediately jumped to that conclusion. This is just more evidence of the racial divides and racism in America. It's like, bro, you have no idea what you're talking about because no one knows what they're talking about. We know something terrible happened to this young man. We don't know why. We don't know what the motivation was. We don't know the other factors involved. Yes, there was a cover-up to it, which looks shady. At the same time, can't we just pump the brakes and instead of just making assumptions, just wait till we have facts that then can drive not just assumptions, but opinions?
That is actually the reason we have a justice system, is so that you can wait for the facts to drive your opinions and thus your judgments.
So we're gonna pivot hard on that very thought. And the way we're going to pivot is that, this show's been dominated by coronavirus, and rightly so. It's been the most pressing topic we've all been dealing with, most relevant thing. But there's been other things going on in our culture that haven't gotten as much press. One of them being the death of the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
And the reason I say the death of the Me Too movement is the hypocrisy as it relates to Joe Biden and the accusation that has been levied his direction about a sexual assault that took place in the 90s. The reactions to that have been appalling.
Literally appalling.
On one end, we've been told and preached to, and this was best exemplified in the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, that all women who make any accusation have to be believed.
Right. Regardless of any of their evidence or
without evidence,
countervailing evidence.
You have to be believed. You have to be believed and then proven wrong, as opposed to there being the presumption of innocence and we have to prove your guilt. We've inverted the legal system in regards to this Me Too movement. Now, I should say, just for disclosure, there's a reason that there's a Me Too movement, and it's not just because of liberal wackos that are trying to run our country. There has been, within our society, an epidemic of sexual assault and men abusing women. primarily this has taken place in two different venues. One is the venue where you have very powerful men with subordinates, hence Bill Clinton and an intern, Harvey Weinstein and a bunch of young actresses that are trying to catch a break. We can go down a list.
Right.
Even within this Joe Biden accusation, powerful senator,
and an aide of some kind.
An aide of some kind, intern, really.
Right.
So on one aspect, you have powerful men abusing vulnerable women, which is disgusting. On the other end, you have a huge epidemic of sexual assault taking place on college campuses. What's not discussed about that particular topic as it relates to college campuses, and Malcolm Gladwell actually wrote a phenomenal piece on this, it coincides with alcoholism. The amount of binge drinking and what alcohol does to the brain, what it does to social environments, what it does to inhibitions and self-control contributes to men operating in base warped desire. We have a lot of this happening. Thus, the Me Too movement doesn't exist within a vacuum. It wasn't something invented. It is a reaction to something that legitimately exists. We could also talk about the high number of domestic violence cases that happen. We have an epidemic. We have a problem in our society about men and how they treat women. I would say that logically you might look at pornography and the influence pornography has had on the way that men view women and thus therefore treat women, the objectifying of women. But no, we don't have those conversations. Powerful men abusing vulnerable women, drunks in college acting the fool, men addicted to pornography, objectifying women. There's a lot of causes for this. Now, the Me Too movement really reaching its steam, ironically, not during the Bill Clinton administration, but primarily when, we don't want a conservative on the Supreme Court. What happened to Brett Kavanaugh was a travesty. Just anybody could come out, make an accusation, and you had to be believed, we were told by the liberals. You have to believe the woman. And in fact, what became so warped about it is that there was no presumption of innocence on the part of the accused, Brett Kavanaugh. The presumption was guilt to the point we required him prove his innocence. It was the negative. Amazing. We have a problem within our legal system that's fueling, I think, some of the things that are pulling at framework of society. You look at a lot of these situations where police officers and young black men and what's perceived to be a miscarriage of justice. We're not presuming innocence, but both ways. Like, there are all kinds of instances where black young men are profiled inappropriately and discriminated against unethically. On the flip side to it, there are other cases where you have white police officers just trying to do their job and they get caught up into a situation, they get branded a racist when they didn't do anything. And then it's years later they get acquitted, but they've already been...
Their life is already destroyed by the internet.
Life is already destroyed by the internet. So we look at those issues, then you look at Me Too, and then Joe Biden, and you had this... Joe Biden led the charge in the Obama administration of changing the Title IX provisions for how colleges were to handle sexual assault allegations. If you take the framework in which he passed, they mandated, and apply it to Joe Biden, he's guilty as charged. This woman is not just credible. She's filed documents in the past. She has multiple people that have, but we can't listen to her. I heard to the point you made the comment about how people are so quick to go to their camps. I heard one very popular pundit on a cable news network make the argument, I believe her. She should be believed. It just doesn't matter because Joe Biden has to be president so that we can get Donald Trump out of office. And it's like the mask has been peeled back.
None of it actually matters to these people.
It really doesn't. It's just we're getting taken advantage of. This is a ploy. Anything you want to just wrap up about this particular topic?
Just the fact that it is literally people just go to their camps. And once they're there, they're going to embed and they're going to fight tooth and nail, whether they believe it or not, moving forward.
Do you think there's any chance that changes in our society?
Probably not. Well, at some point, Jesus is going to come back and split the Mount of Olives in half, and then we'll be fine.
And then he's going to replace our society with the kingdom of God.
Right. At that point, we'll be fine.
Listen,
Up until then,
I have so little faith. Like people long for, man, I just wish there was some bipartisan goodwill within our country. You're a moron if you think that's even remotely possible. Because we're already in camps about a global pandemic.
Which is crazy.
The liberals already have, the Democrats already have their talking point on what they're wanting to do, and you have Republicans saying they want to just keep this stuff closed down so that they can destroy the economy to guarantee Donald Trump can't win. And it's like, you're accusing one side of wanting to destroy the economy for political reasons, and you think that's crazy until you listen to Bill Maher, who's like, man, we should destroy the economy so Donald Trump isn't president.
Yeah.
Crazy. We're already over. Don't go anywhere. Come right back here on the Outlaw Radio Show. All right, let's just go right now.
What is it?
9:45. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. If you're listening and you enjoy what you're listening, you can watch. Visit outlawradio.live. It's our YouTube channel. We are recording the recording of the Outlaw Radio Show on video. We're releasing it Thursday nights at 8 p.m., so I encourage you to check it out. We've been talking about a lot of different things, a lot of different topics. Creighton, again.
Hello, everyone.
Creighton is my sidekick, the Millennial Observer. I want to pivot again to another topic that it's sad. It's near and dear to my heart, and that's what's going on with Ravi Zacharias. So a lot of you don't know about Ravi Zacharias. He is, I think, one of the most brilliant Christian thinkers.
He's an absolute baller.
Since C.S. Lewis, maybe, of at least the last 40 years. He is a incredible academic, multiple PhDs, very smart. He's written many books on a wide array of various topics, again, dealing with philosophy, dealing with Christian thought, dealing with defending the faith. One of the premier things. So he's, in addition to being an author, he started the Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. He travels the globe, not just speaking to really whoever would invite him, sharing his faith and addressing Christian topics from a very academic standpoint. But he's known for going into hostile academic environments and fielding questions, doing question and answers. You can find him doing Q&As at Oxford, University of Michigan, Harvard,
Georgia Tech.
All over the place. And what he does is he would start with about a 25-minute lecture, and then they would open the floor, and people, boom, would line up, trying to levy gotcha questions. I saw one of these videos this past week where it was an individual, and he says, why are you so afraid of subjective moral reasoning? And Ravi Zacharias, he just gets up and he says, do you lock your doors at night? And the whole place laughed, and he diffused the question. He made his point, but he was just a genius in doing this. Now, the reason I bring up Ravi Zacharias, and we've, by the way, with the Outlaw Radio Show, you might have even heard an advertisement for his ministry, which we're big supporters of. The reason I bring it up is that a few months back, Ravi Zacharias was dealing with just debilitating chronic back pain, really terrible back pain. So finally got to the point where he had surgery to go in to fix the problem, alleviate his pain, and then just afterwards he just couldn't recover, just continuing to complain of just even worse pain in his lower back. Well, they did some tests and they found a very rare form of cancer. And if you think you know where the story's going, you do. They immediately began blasting it with radiation and chemotherapy and all types of... They hit it with everything they had, hoping that they could set the stage where they could go in surgically and remove the tumor. Last week, they received the terrible news that all the treatments had failed, and subsequently there was nothing more that they could do, and that they sent him home. Quality of life, spend time with your family. Your days, apart from a miracle, are numbered. And I should say that we serve the great physician, and we do pray for healing if it's the Lord's will. But if it's the end of Ravi Zacharias' race, we should be incredibly thankful that we lived during a time period where we could hear him and be ministered to by him and inspired because of him. And I just, in some ways, I want to give a shout out to Ravi Zacharias. Ravi Zacharias taught me that you could be smart and be a Christian, that my faith was reasonable, that faith wasn't blind, but that we have enough intelligence and reason and logic and evidence to make faith incredibly rational. He challenged me to think harder. He challenged me to move beyond simple answers, but to get into deeper things. He encouraged me to engage the skeptic and not be afraid to share my faith. He taught me how it's more important to win the soul than win the argument, and that it takes a lot of grace and meekness to do both, to not just make a solid, rational argument, but do it in such a way that the person you're ministering to isn't defensive, that they'll listen, winning the argument and winning the soul. We pray for healing, but if that's not the Lord's will, we do pray for his wife. We pray for his kids and his friends. We pray that the time that they have until they are reunited in heaven are blessed. Creighton, you have any Ravi Zacharias thoughts?
Just that I would encourage anybody and everybody who is interested in the defense of their faith to go look up talks that he's given. Like he did, he would do a circuit, and it would be like him and other people.
John Lennox.
It would be him, John Lennox, a guy named Nabil Qureshi, who actually died of stomach cancer a few years ago. And they would do, that's exactly how they would do it. They would come in with a topic, and they would speak on it for 20 or 30 minutes. And they would open the floor to questions, and then like rebut the questions. And sometimes it would turn into a conversation. Sometimes it would just diffuse the question if it was dumb or argumentative, and they were very good at it. And it's all, there's so much stuff on YouTube, and it's fantastic.
The two books I would encourage anyone to read, Can Man Live Without God and Jesus Among Other Gods, they will survive the test of time.
Yeah.
They're brilliant in and of themselves. And then I would also, and I'm blanking on the title, I apologize that I don't have the title, but Ravi Zacharias recently, last 10 years, came out with kind of an autobiography of his life, and he tells his story, how he went from being a skeptic on the verge of suicide to giving his life to Jesus. He kind of recounts his own Damascus Road experience, and it humanizes him. It makes him endearing, and it's inspiring. There are a lot of other things that I would like to talk about today. We are sadly running out of time. Maybe next week we'll discuss a little bit more about Joe Biden and some of the hypocrisy. Creighton, would you be able to pull up the book?
Yes, it is Walking from East to West, God in the Shadows.
Walking from East to West, God in the Shadows. Seriously, go to Amazon, pull up the book. Other things can wait for next week. Ravi Zacharias, please keep him and his family in your thoughts and in your prayers. Creighton, I appreciate you being on the Outlaw Radio Show.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
Well, you've been listening again to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams. If you liked what you heard, I want to encourage you to do a few things. First, contact your local Christian radio station and just tell them that you're thankful that they're carrying Outlaw Radio in your community. These blessed saints do not make a bunch of money running radio stations. It's a labor of love. It is a ministry to your community. So if you're listening on the local dial, make a phone call, shoot an email, find their Facebook page, and just say thank you. It goes a long way. The other thing, don't forget about our podcast. Every episode of the Outlaw Radio Show is podcasted in its entirety. You can check out our podcast, which is on Apple Podcasting, Google Play, Spotify. You can go to those platforms and just search Outlaw Radio or Zach Adams. They're easy to find. Or you can just go to our website, which is outlawradio.org, and we have quick links there as well. Let's connect. We want to hear from you. Our email address is info@outlawradio.org, Twitter @radio_outlaw, and facebook.com/theradioOutlaw. Every episode of the show is also being filmed. Thursday nights at 8 p.m. is the video version of the Outlaw Radio Show. You can see me, you can see Creighton. Come join us. Again, I'm Zach. I hope you join me this time next week for more of the Outlaw Radio Show. Yeah, sad about Robbie.
Yeah, man, that's...
Did you hear about that? Did you know about that?
I think I saw something on Facebook about it, but I was either busy or I had no idea that he was... I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah.
That is a shame.
Yeah, I think the time is short from what I've gathered. They've got a whole bunch of stuff on. I think that the Twitter hashtag is "Thank You Ravi," where people are recording video messages or leaving kind statements, and then I guess his family is reading these things to him, showing him the videos.
Oh, that's awesome.
One of, if there is a silver lining, is that, before he dies, he'll have a better understanding, I think, of the full scope of impact that he's made on the kingdom of God. And, just, he's in his 70s. He's run his race. He's going to finish it well. And it's refreshing. I mean, how many men like that do we have?
That's a once-in-a-generation kind
that
of
have
man.
Well, and not just that, but how many men like that who there's never been a hint of scandal, has handled his business with integrity, has been married to one woman for years and years and years. His kids love Jesus. There's never been a whiff of any type of financial improprieties with his organization. I mean, it's just, in today's day and age, he seems to have also been a very good judge of character. He surrounded himself with a lot of really, really good people.
No, the world will definitely be worse off without Ravi Zacharias in it.
Yeah, it's a shame. If you don't know anything about Ravi Zacharias, seriously, just reach out. We'll send you some information. Again, what was his book?
It is Walking from East to West, God in the Shadows.
I'd highly recommend it for sure. Well, anything just kind of off air you wanna?
You know what? This empathy thing is really it's gotten into my head, and it's all I can think about right now. Is the idea that people have lost empathy, like in a big way.
Have you lost empathy?
Maybe.
Have we all lost empathy?
So
like the ability to empathize with someone else's position, their shoes, their viewpoint.
So it's an interesting question because, I have a hard time empathizing with people I disagree with, but I have a very easy time empathizing with people I agree with.
Well, I think people mistake empathy with agreement. I can disagree with you and empathize.
You can, but I don't know if everyone else can. And I think I can sometimes. It depends on what we're talking about. You know how do you know how the term barbarian works? Like terms like barbarian, or some of these may be pejoratives nowadays. Kraut, barbarian, like how that works in war.
No, but the audience is hanging on pins and needles.
Basically, when you're in war, what happens is you have two sides, they're coming to fight, and they start to call, whatever side you're on, you start to call the other one by a dehumanizing name. It's why we call the Germans Krauts and the Japanese Japs in World War II, because if they're less human, it makes them easier to kill.
Makes sense.
And I think that, like, politically, we're doing the exact same thing. It's an
interesting theory.
It's why the left calls conservatives Nazis, and why the right calls the left either leftists or liberals, depending on who you ask.
Or socialists.
It's a way to dehumanize, because it's easier to, like, ignore their good points and harp on their bad points if they're not human. And it's kind of fascinating to me, and it makes it easier to skew things so that you're only talking about your good things and only talking about their bad things if you can dehumanize them.
Which is what labeling ultimately is designed to do.
Yes. And I want to be very clear. I don't actually have a structure to the thoughts currently. I'm just kind
still
of thinking out
about
loud
it,
because it's very interesting to me that it's just.
What's fascinating is that you've never really had. Again, I've known you a long time. You've never had this type of a reaction to very similar stories.
I've never really had this type of reaction to anything.
Interesting.
I'm not very reactionary. It's just fascinating to me because it's so fast and it is so unilateral.
I think that there is an importance, and you've heard people say this, just to shutting up and listening. Like, we need to listen more to each other. I tell my kids, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you speak. Smartest people I know listen way more than they talk. The dumbest people I know talk way more than they listen.
Agreed.
I think empathy ties into I think at first it comes back to a desire to care. Like, if I don't care what you think, then there's no point in me having any type of empathy about your position.
Right.
I don't care. I think there's a lot of that's driven in our society because of narcissism.
Agreed.
When all opinions matter, no one's does, other than mine.
Right. And then if it's the only thing that matters, then nobody outside of yourself matters. And then you can do whatever you want.
And then we get into these particular, and then these have ramifications when you're dealing with real serious things, like two black guys and a white guy. Two white guys and a black guy. When you're dealing with Me Too stuff, you're dealing with the accused and the accuser, and
you're dealing with anything.
Let's be honest. There's immediately you have a whole group of people that want Joe Biden to go to jail for raping a gal. And then you have a whole nother group of people that want the gal who might have been raped to go away. Both are terrible positions because
neither of them have the facts or law on their side.
Or due process.
Right.
And the same treatment's been made, to be fair, the same treatment. I don't think we've ever seen this type of partisanism and division in our society till Donald Trump came along. And I don't blame Donald Trump. I think it's been in reaction to him and then a counter reaction because of it.
Yes.
I think Donald Trump isn't the cause of the ills of our society. He has just revealed the deep-seated ills.
Everything has been cranked to 11 in the last
within our
5
society.
years or so.
Yeah, for sure.
And 11's not a good place to put people on because we're very reactionary.
There's only one instance that you can turn things up to 11, and that's with an electric guitar.
That's a Spinal Tap reference.
Well, anyway, I'm hungry, and I'm going to eat dinner and get some chicken wings.
That sounds like a great idea.
And so, Creighton, thank you for being with me.
Always a pleasure. I will see y'all later.